Chapter 6, Discipleship. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Proverbs 27:17, English Standard Version. Discipleship is where the push for evangelism hits the road, and where the realities of a life lived in Christ meets the changing of a life apart from Christ. It takes someone well versed in the gospel to disciple someone well, but this assumes, of course, that this actually happens. While somewhat tragic, the modern church has become a spectator sport in too many sanctuaries. The worship services are filled with bright lights and professionally produced music, animated screens that lead us to religious karaoke, and it really is too dark to read your Bible during any of it. You would think that last statement I was describing a bad thing, and I'm not, really. I like big churches. I think they're awesome. I think the people who complain about them just aren't good at production value and frankly might be jealous. It's a hard truth, but I do honestly believe it is a truth because we see people get saved at home churches and mega churches alike. It's quite literally not an either-or issue. The bravado and expense of a large church service often translate into more people getting into the message the church produces. What comes along with the message, though, is spectators. People who don't want to help out in any volunteer ministry aspect. People who abuse childcare for two hours on a Sunday and vacation Bible school. People who rely on the church's ministries to do the spiritual upbringing of their families. The list goes on and on. For many people, it is their Christian walk. A blending of good preaching and large crowds allows for a hands-off approach to being a Christian. The reason this doesn't fly at a small church is that there are fewer places to hide. A lack of interaction is only common in large church because you can literally not know that many people. If your weekend service consists of over 1,000 people, there are precious few even capable of knowing all those names, let alone the stories of that many people. If you want to hide, you just can't. Smile, shake hands, come late, leave early. Forcing interaction will never work. People naturally make friends in certain individuals over others. We all hate the 1-minute timer of our connections pastors squeeze into the main service. Don't pretend like you don't, where we awkwardly shake the same 10 to 12 people's hands we did last week in an effort to build community. Yeah, that last sentence hurt. I know, I'm sorry. But would boldly identify with the group of Christians being persecuted. We would boldly identify with a group of Christians being persecuted, but heaven help us should we have to go on a short-term mission trip with them. The internet allows for a dangerous fake church to be present. Posting sermons online can give people the exact same experience as their modern-day megachurch without the hassle of long walks to the bathroom and a comfy couch in lieu of stadium seating. If all we do is watch, then that's all there is. There is functionally no difference between a church in a stadium and a church on a laptop. Streaming video has the inherent threat of anonymity in a place that is supposed to be a body of believers. For the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor can the head say to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem weaker are indispensable, and the parts of the body that we think less honorable we bestow greater honor on. Our unpresentable parts are then treated with greater modesty. 1 Corinthians 12:21-23, ESV. The technology isn't inherently wrong here. People are, on both sides as well. We're all sinners. It may be tempting to point a finger at the people who call themselves Christians, but only watch the latest celebrity pastor preach via Vimeo. But the use of church tech isn't wrong. It's just short-sighted. Our attendance to a brick-and-mortar church doesn't make us authentic Christians either, like the way a garage doesn't make anything in it a car. Discipleship isn't what happens at a church. It's what happens in your small group, or what happens in your office while you listen to a Christian podcast. It's what happens when you follow Jesus Christ. If you get inspired at church to share the gospel and walk with a new believer towards a devoted Christian life in Christ, great. That's discipleship. But if you watch a pastor teach through the book of the Bible that you can share that insight via the web with another believer, how is that not the same thing? The first requires a building and all the bills associated with it, a believer and a paid pastoral staff willing to preach the Bible. And the second requires a believer, a paid pastoral staff posting his content online, in or because of the building they had to preach it from. It's the same Lego set, just assembled differently. The internet only enters the picture here. It doesn't interfere. It just exists. The Christian listening to what their pastor knowingly gives his congregation in his teaching is being a disciple. The Christian listening to what a pastor knowingly posts online is also being a disciple too. It's worth noting that the persons in the Bible didn't, noting that in person That being in person didn't even matter to the writers of the Bible. How many of Paul's letters required them to read them to the churches he sent to personally? None. He sent them to build up those early churches while he wasn't there. And there was a distinct need for it to be shared without him there. We see the same thing possible with every preacher online and every one believer looking to be a disciple. In this atmosphere, a believing mom with six kids during the flu season can devoutly study the scriptures with her pastor, and an anxiety-filled lover of Christ doesn't need to attend church where you're forced to shake hands with people after the second worship set. Where it won't work is where a false teacher or a heretic starts posting things online. The internet has been a place where people can be released from the standards of traditional leadership and influence, and I for one think it's a good thing, but I think it's a dangerous thing too. It's a meritocracy. Everyone has a voice here, which leads to a lot of opportunities that simply weren't there before. The online music scene looks drastically different from the more mainstream traditional music industry 50 years ago. Now, anyone with a decent camera and a mic and musical talent can make original music and gain a following on YouTube and SoundCloud. In some cases, this is a better option than traditional artist path. Talent and popularity gain on the production value of the publicity because the force multipliers of online video and social media. This could be a bad thing too. No one likes a fake, but fakes can hack these systems that enable a level ground approach to creators, and their following will look like success when it's really just numbers. You will find dozens of best-selling authors online because of a thing called niche marketing. If a person can write, or at worst get ghost-written, a book that will trend perfectly in Google search algorithms, it reaches the top. One that will show up in the numbers searched. One that shows up as the #1 search title on Amazon for insert title here, and they will technically be the best seller. Now, the book could be absolute crap, but until the book is bought and it is being portrayed as #1. For the Christian, this can be a dangerous dance with idolatry. It's easy to make clickbait material, and Christians are no different from the rest of the online world when it comes to content creation. Having a message that reaches people is important, but our message comes with a moral imperative. We claim to be preaching and sharing the truth. That means not using deceit to reach people. Puts us at a contradictory position with the truth. In short, we can fake our way persuasively out of popular position. Look at that. I got 7 chapters in before I relapsed into good old Christian alliteration. Christian clickbait will be the Don Stewart's emerald green prayer cloths of our generation online. If we truly want to preach the gospel online and pray for people, it can't be connected to extensive clothing line or a book deal. It needs to be authentic. The understanding that no matter how big your presence online gets, you aren't a leader in the church unless you are a leader of the church. Anyone can create a following online, but only God can call someone to the role of pastor, and that calling should be confirmed by that person's church leadership and membership. On the flip side of the coin is churches need to release online personalities as online missionaries to avoid the potential problem. There could be great Bible teachers who wouldn't cut it behind a pulpit because of introversion, but could rock the blogosphere. Christians online need to be under the authority of a pastor or an accountability to Christians who serve in leadership. It'd be way too easy for someone that's disqualified from leadership in a local church to post good sermons and content and build a following around them. How easy would it be to mock up a pallet wood backdrop and preach controversially in skinny jeans? That's half the online sermons you could find right now in a nutshell. Could you see the congregation and the elders board keeping any of those preachers online accountable to biblical standards of leadership? Me neither. Christian YouTubers should have their pastors involved in the themes and content that they produce as if it were a ministry. If the activity outside the godly assessment of that individual, and that assessment is that they're not fit for ministry or leadership, it's setting an individual up to fail to bring people with them. When this happens, discipleship becomes subversion, and there's no restriction option for the popularity that threatens to lead people astray online. You would never know it until it was too late. A sexually unfaithful divorced ex-pastor could post a perfectly manicured second life online, build a following, and find himself with venues to preach at and income coming in. Without a church to hold him accountable to provide oversight, his eventual exposure and downfall could send hundreds, if not thousands, away from the church in every direction. People will see his false authority and hypocritical teaching as gospel instead of the actual gospel as gospel, and then leave Christianity potentially forever, all because the meritocracy of the internet allowed for a good public speaker to use the gospel as a niche to make a living online. People need to be confirmed for online ministry, the same way people are confirmed for ministry IRL. No shortcuts. Once confirmed, being above reproach is key. The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to be the office of an overseer, he desires a noble task, and therefore an overseer must be above reproach. A husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. 1 Timothy 3:1-3 ESV. There are good reason elders and deacons have high bars of accountability and responsibility in the Bible, not because they're the first people the enemy of the church go for. It's because they are the first people the enemies of the church go for. When leaders fail, followers go with them. In a world with that will not differentiate between a Christian YouTube channel who's playing church by posting sermons and a church proper who's trying to run a legitimate online ministry with their YouTube channel. Think of every celebrity sex tape, drug addiction, and drama-filled life, and know that it can happen to anyone online. It is the reality of a hyper-connected environment. Sins get exposed. This is why every online ministry, however small, needs the oversight of a person's actual church and the accountability and humility of Christians working online together. A person should not only want to, but feel they need their church involved with their online presence if they're meant to reach and possibly disciple people. Finally, multiple accounts with differing info give the impression of falsehood. Same with frivolous usernames. There was a time where everyone had a ridiculous Hotmail account, like toddisawesome69@hotmail.com or goofyismyhero99yahoo.ca. And that was cute at the time, but would you attend Goofy 99's church or take him seriously if he asked you about accepting Jesus into your heart? How about if he refuted your atheist assertions on Reddit? No? Be honest now. Because while I believe there's room for all kinds of colorful characters in online ministry, there's just no room for people not taking online ministry seriously. There's a real need for honesty and transparency that supersedes personal tastes here. The dreaded sock puppet accounts that exist for anonymous actions online are the whitewashed tombs Jesus preached against. We are Christians online, but can't be anything but the online versions of ourselves. We shouldn't hide behind a username, a cartoon account avatar, and a cartoon account avatar, knowing people won't know it's us. Not one of your usernames or account profiles will be entered into the book of life when Jesus comes back. So be honest about who you are online. You can be busy. You can manage a dozen different accounts and web pages, but don't hide behind a username so people won't find out who you are. That's deceit, plain and simple. And it can seem like a bit of a pipe dream to see the vast reach of online discipleship being as productive and valued thing in the church. But let me remind you, there were times in our not too distant past where the kids were told they could not play video games for a living. Those kids were lied to, plain and simple, as the ever-growing presence of YouTube and Twitch gaming channels screams at those early disdainers. That some of them made over $1 million last year doing what they love. I guarantee you one of those gamers had their prayers answered in high school and had Christian parents that told them it wasn't worth it. One that might have been late for the Bible study as well. Why don't we follow their example and pray for authentic online discipleship to emerge in our generation? That chapter has so much stuff that flirts with my new understanding with online ministry. Everything from, using the online environment like Paul did with his letters. I agree that it can be used for discipleship, but I still don't think it can be used for church, and that those are separate things, and that Paul recognized there were separate things, and it's very unclear for here. But there's like a bunch of stuff. But mainly, I think the thing I got most right in that chapter was the clickbait, and because we are seeing that so often. There is so much grift when it comes to like the online church. Everybody who's written a book on the online church has like a consulting service or a course or a website plugin or something else. I understand that there is a need for Christians to be able to make money with the gospel that they preach. In fact, Paul talks about that. That there should be a return for the hard work that you put into the gospel. But this is just Christian flavored marketing. And that's what, a lot of like online engagement and discipleship in online ministry is looking for. It's lead generation, and it's transparently so to people who know how that works online. But the real discipleship, that real connection with other people. I think that's just something that's being missed and that's not being taken seriously. And we saw glimpses of it during COVID. We saw glimpses of it as people, had Zoom rooms for their Bible studies and stuff like that, at least facilitating what was in person. But I really do think that, there's a host of people who are probably just ace theologians that could be teaching on stuff that just need to be confirmed as that in the church. And you need to start a YouTube channel where you talk about theology. Not because we need that ministry in our church, but because the internet needs that. We're going to send you out as that kind of digital missionary, even though I kind of cringe at the term nowadays. It is the thing where, without those content providers, without those people posting that content, what is it going to look like? That it's just going to be the regular content arbitrage of the internet, where, you just have, funny cat videos and, people playing video games and reacts and unboxing. It's there needs to be theology videos so it pops up in the discovery algorithm as people are swiping. There needs to be that content generated, and that can't just land on pastors. Or worse, it can't just be ripped out of their sermons, because that's such a shallow, introductory level application to the scriptures when it's just taken from the sermon, or you take a sermon, you break it up into pieces. That's a great way to generate content, but it's not a great way to generate. It's a great way to generate a breadth of content. It's not a great way to generate a depth of content. Having even a TikTok, 2-minute videos, I question the validity of the platform, but if you could do 2-minute videos that slowly just chip away at the big blocks of theology and theological understanding, then it would make sense. But that kind of stuff needs to happen in a church environment. It can't just happen because you want to. It needs to be you having a desire to teach this stuff, being confirmed as a teacher in your local church so that you can go out and teach this stuff and there's some sort of accountability. We have TikTok and YouTube pastoral stars who have no churches over them that are just preaching whatever they want because they know how to set up a good podcast and it looks like they're professionals, and really it's just them talking. And it's going to get us into a troublesome place where we don't know what we're going to do with all the different directions that this can go. We thought it was confusing with all the denominations that we have right now. When everyone has that meritocratic access to the internet, we're all denominations now. If you don't agree 100% with how your denomination and your specific church teaches doctrine, you can just start your own denomination online and teach that stuff. And if it doesn't come from the church, if it doesn't come from a body of believers that that sharpens each other so that it has the back end of that feedback loop, then all you do is just branching off one more way of a million different ways because you can. So the online discipleship really doesn't get talked about enough as far as what are the implications of doing it and what are the implications of if we do it wrong. And I really think that's important. So hope you guys liked it. Thanks for listening.